Hi, this is Andrew Davey from Let's Talk About It, and we're here today with Joe Brezny, who is working on the Yes on 2 campaign. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, I guess I should congratulate you. I see a Suffolk poll just dropped this morning. 24-point lead for marijuana legalization. You must be very happy.
I like seeing polls like that. It's nice, but that doesn't really match the turnout the turnout model we've seen internally. So we're seeing that this is a closer race than that. We're ahead.
Earlier polls certainly showed that.
Yes. So I think that we're going to try and be wise and just run scared until election day, and hopefully, yeah. In politics, even when you're ahead,
even in this year of the outsider, when everyone's ready to kick the establishment in behind.
Well, the thing that worries me about that kind of year is it's really hard to know who's going to show up, because some people are showing up because they're upset about what's going on. Some people are not showing up because they're upset about what's going on. So the fundamentals of campaigning still apply, where we just want to get this message out to our supporters about how important it is to get out and vote yes on 2.
Well, staying on this topic, the general assumption going into this campaign season was, okay, it looks like Democrats have a good shot at holding the White House, open Senate race, lots of boots on the ground. As long as those progressive voters show up, question 2 should pass. But over the summer, we've seen some interesting fault lines develop. Earlier this summer, I covered a Libertarian Party rally where they were encouraging folks to vote yes on question 2. And then on the other hand, we've seen comments from Senator Reid, Catherine Cortez Masto. Are you concerned at all about losing certain sects of voters?
Not really. We've seen there are always people who will publicly come out against this, either because they truly oppose it or because they find it politically expedient. But we've got some things going on in Nevada that you just don't see anywhere else in the country. More than a quarter of our sitting legislators have endorsed this and have said to vote yes on 2. That almost never happens because legislators are so worried about not being voted back that they'll just take a pass. They won't oppose it. But having more than a quarter of the legislature say this is a better way for Nevada, that's really encouraging. Usually we only see former legislators. And talking about formers, the former law enforcement officers that have come out of the woodwork to say this is a better way. Marijuana has never been the issue. Marijuana's out there, it's everywhere, it's just not regulated, and that's the issue. Marijuana DUIs aren't the issue. Marijuana and violence doesn't happen. So even our law enforcement officers are saying that this is a way that we can free up law enforcement to focus on more pressing needs. There's always been that more cops push that we haven't funded yet, and that's going to be part of this special session. And it's something where more cops would be great, but also freeing them up from chasing their tail on marijuana enforcement would just allow them to concentrate on the big problems.
Well, since you brought up law enforcement, a number of law enforcement groups have endorsed no on 2, and just recently the Nevada Medical Association announced they're against question 2 because they're concerned about public safety, public health. What do you have to say to folks who are concerned? Well, if we pass this, my kids might get hot gummies on Halloween.
Right. The suggestion that regulating something tightly will increase its exposure to kids, not only is the logic behind that absurd, but the numbers also don't back that up. If you look at the Healthy Kids Survey, which is the largest survey of kids in Colorado, our opponents cite a really small survey that told them what they wanted to hear, but the gold standard survey in Colorado is the Healthy Kids Survey. It's what they use to benchmark where their kids are education-wise and in regard to things like how many of them are consuming marijuana underage. And if you look at those numbers, it shows 2 things. Colorado teens consume marijuana at a rate lower than the national average, and usage since regulation has gone down a tick. We would call it flat, it's within a normal range, but usage has gone down. And so it's something where when you regulate this, you can put it in the hands of responsible business people that check ID and that make sure that adults who should have access to this don't get hassled for it. Adults that consume a substance that's less harmful than alcohol just by choice, they shouldn't get hassled for that. But we can work together with the industry to keep it away from kids through child-proof packaging, through the bill draft that we just dropped in Nevada. They'll make Nevada the toughest state in the country for edibles regulation. Square shapes only, no animal shapes, no bright colors, child-proof packaging. So regulation can fix those problems. But the pot brownies that we had in the 70s and 80s, there was no control on. Those were the original edible. No control on dosages, no control on packaging, no one checking ID. Regulation is just a better way.
So you are hoping the legislator will, should question 2 pass, the legislator will follow up with additional regulations?
Well, yes, and I think they're going to do that anyway. I think they're going to do that with the medical marijuana regulations for edibles anyway, and then if question 2 passes, they'll do it for recreational as well.
Mm-hmm. Are you concerned at all that considering what the legislator may have on its plate next session, that maybe they won't have time to get around to that?
No, because once this passes, it can be implemented without action from the legislature, just through regulations, but I think they'll want to have their stamp on it. What we've seen from the legislature is even with issues they've been hesitant to engage on, when they do finally engage, they really want to do it right. So that's what we expect will happen.
Now, you brought up Colorado a little earlier, and it's nice that you did, because there's been a whole lot of spin on what's been happening in Colorado. But I will point out that generally it seems like Colorado has a somewhat more robust public infrastructure. So, one could argue, well, they can handle all these issues with pot. But here in Nevada, especially with our healthcare sector already strained and potentially some budget problems next session, can we really handle the risk?
Well, the first thing that I would say to that is I don't see the risk, and the numbers don't bear out that there's risk here, because what we've found is that the $1.1 billion marijuana market that we predict will be regulated within 5 years of question 2 passing, that $1.1 billion marijuana market's already here. It's just underground. It rewards cartels and criminals, but that activity is here. So the social problems we have with marijuana are here, which is why we have one of the toughest DUI laws in the country for marijuana. Because if someone's going to choose to consume marijuana, it's illegal, but it's not hard to get. So it's something where people have not been stopped by the fact that it's illegal. So we're already paying for those things. Yeah. The difference is that once we regulate this, the regulation will pay for itself, and then some. The regulation will bring in $60 million a year in tax revenue. $40 million of that will go toward regulating this, educating law enforcement, and in Colorado, they actually had a surplus of money going to the schools where they're now funding an anti-bullying program. That story dropped yesterday. They had more money than they originally wanted, or they originally expected, and so they're spending the extra million. So there's been a net of $45 million to the schools. That's not happening right now. And also, overall, we spend $40 billion a year on marijuana enforcement and $38 billion a year nationally on incarceration for those crimes. We're spending a lot of money on a really, really big failure. It just hasn't worked.
So I guess we might as well get to the flip side of this equation, which is we've had readers ask about potential benefit to society. I know over the course of the summer, I've spoken with folks who've said, well, look at Colorado. If we pass question 2, we'll see a bonanza of money come into the state. This will really help in balancing our budget, bringing in more tourists. Now, how much truth is there actually to some of this boosterism? Well, if we just pass question 2, then everything's solved.
I have never argued that marijuana regulation is a cure-all. I don't believe it is. I think it's better public policy. I think it's better for our, to answer the question of how does this benefit society, I think the answers are in many ways. Tax money being one of them. $60 million a year in tax money is nothing to sneeze at. An extra $20 million a year for education, I mean, that's a new elementary school every year paid for by these tax dollars.
It's not enough to balance the budget on its own, but
correct.
It helps.
It does help. But overall, what are we doing here that will help society? Well, for people 18 and over in Colorado, marijuana arrests dropped 68%. So not only is that better because we're not hassling people because they're making a safer choice, but it's also better because each one of those arrests and prosecutions costs the government between $1,000 and $2,000. With 68% fewer of those, you're freeing up that's the hard evidence that we can really free up police and prosecutor time to focus on violent crimes, gang violence, to focus on the real problems like other harder drugs, and to focus, instead of hassling adults who shouldn't be hassled for choosing to consume this, they can focus on helping keep it away from kids, which we should do.
Yeah. Keeping on this matter of benefits to society. Over the past few years, Governor Sandoval has talked about developing what he calls the new Nevada. You know, we've seen this with the push to bring Tesla in, now Faraday. A few years ago, when he addressed the legislator, Senator Reid also touched on this when he noted his concern about sex work remaining legal in Nevada and what that does to our public image, what image we're portraying to the rest of the world. What would you say to folks who are concerned? Hey, we're trying to turn a corner here. You know, we want to clean up our act. What are we saying to businesses considering moving here when we allow reefer madness in the state willy-nilly?
Well, a couple of things. The first is if you look at what's happened in Washington and Colorado, companies like Google and Amazon are expanding their operations there. So these are the very companies...
They're not closing up shop.
No. They're actually breaking ground on $300,000 square foot expansions. They're hiring hundreds of new workers. It's something where Google and Amazon are expanding in these states. So it's not chasing away big business. And then if you talk about the tourism infrastructure here, it's something where I had that suggested to me, and I just rephrased the question to answer the question. I said, I just want to make sure I've got this straight. We live in a state where there are slot machines in every grocery store. In every Albertsons you walk into, there's a slot parlor right there. And we also regulate prostitution, one of the only states in the country that does it. But you're concerned that someone booking a convention is going to go, you know, Vegas, they've got gambling everywhere, and they've got legalized prostitution an hour outside of town. But now that they've legalized marijuana, even though marijuana is everywhere in the country, every pocket, every place where it's prohibited, where it's not prohibited, it's either there in a regulated market or a black market, that's going to be the reason we're going to cancel our convention. My prediction is that we'll follow the same trend that Denver is following. Their convention business is up. Their tourism business is up significantly, double digits. And the other thing is that in our tourism industry, what we've done is we know there are marijuana consumers here that are our tourists, but we push them to the edges, we push them to the outside. If it's something that we're regulating, it's something where instead of cannibalizing each other for our tourism industry and just fighting for the same pool of tourists, we may actually be able to bring in tourists with a safe, regulated place to purchase and consume marijuana. I think that's a great thing.
Now, getting back to regulation, this is a problem we've had just with medical marijuana. That it took about 12, 13 years for the state, after voters passed a ballot initiative to allow for medical marijuana, for the legislature to finally come around and deal with the issue of, okay, how are these folks supposed to get it? And so we had dispensary legislation. And even now we're still working out some kinks there. So what would you say to critics who know, well, Nevada's been having some problems just regulating medical marijuana. Why add to that with recreational marijuana?
Well, I think we had the best medical marijuana law in the country when it passed. I think they passed a really solid base program.
Ballot initiative in 2000?
Well, no, when they passed the regulatory bill a few years ago, yeah. And it's something where ending prohibition is complex, but we did pass this in 2000. It has been 16 years for medical. We did pass the dispensary law 3 years ago now, and by the time this is implemented, it'll be more than 4 years since they got the dispensary law passed. So I don't think we're rushing. And if we look at what's happening nationally, I do have a big concern because California is polling significantly higher than we are. They're polling at 62 to 64% in support of their marijuana initiative. And so we get a lot of driving traffic in southern Nevada from Southern California. And in northern Nevada, Northern California is a 20-minute drive. And so my fear is that if California passes this and Nevada doesn't, then we're in a situation where the California government will reap all of the tax benefits of this, of regulating this and of selling this, but we'll end up with still having to deal with the end consumer.
Yeah, that's another interesting point because I believe both California and Arizona also have recreational marijuana ballot.
Yes, so we could really have. I mean, we're bordered in the north by Oregon for
which
parts.
Already has.
So we're a border state for that part that we border with Oregon. We'd have California. We'd have Arizona. Basically, Utah would be the only corner where we're bordering. Where
and that's a whole other issue.
I think we're safe on that one. I don't think they're going to go for a while, but you never know. There are some progressives in Salt Lake.
Yeah. Well, so finally, what's your pitch to those voters out there who are still making up their minds on a whole lot of things that are on the ballot, including question 2? Who may be on the fence and are wondering, should we do it? Should we give it a try? What do you think could convince them?
I think there's a lot of rhetoric at the ground level on this. We say our things, they say their things, and it's a campaign.
Yeah.
But I think if you step back and you look at this from the 40,000-foot view, I think it's fair to say that regulating marijuana and that transition in Colorado and Washington and Oregon, it's gone remarkably well. We're producing tax revenue for schools. We're producing tax revenue that covers the cost of regulation. And it's something where the baseline argument that if we know that marijuana prohibition has failed, that it's an expensive failure, but alcohol prohibition also didn't work, and alcohol is more addictive, it's more damaging to the body, it's more likely to be associated with violent behavior, and yet we choose to treat this as a criminal issue and penalize adults for making a safer choice. It's something from a fairness issue, from a public safety issue, from a regulating it to keep it away from kids issue. Regulation just makes more sense.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I have one question.
Yes.
I don't know if we'll use it. What do you say to those people who do not want to pay taxes, yet want the services, yet will vote no on question 2 and leave the tax money on the table?
That's been a very difficult pill to swallow for me personally because there's no logic to that. We have a group of people that are saying that they complained about any tax hike, but this is something that they're opposing on a moral issue. This is something where you have a community here that's saying, please tax us, please regulate us. And so the irony on that is pretty thick, that the very people that are saying we want the benefits but we don't want to tax are ignoring a group that is willing to be taxed because of a moral concern. And so it's an eye roll from our side. It's something where the irony is pretty thick on it, but elected officials don't always make sense, unfortunately.